What's going on, everybody? This is James, Grandmaster Facts Voice, and this is the Facts Project. Today, I got a special guest for everybody. My main man, Michael Simeon, Blackgate Comic Geek. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate having being on the show.
See, man, you look.
And again, last time we were on a show together was when I invited you to do my Lovecraft Country.
But that's the thing. I wanted to reciprocate the offer because for those that don't know, we started a trio, me, him, and Fantastic Frankie. We are the niggas in magic. You know what I'm saying? So we got together for a follow-up post episode of Lovecraft Country, and Michael invited us on his YouTube page. We went live. It was an excellent show. You know what I'm saying? It was chat room was, man, your chat room was bubbling. God,
it was. I was actually surprised.
Yo, I gotta say, I am happy for the success of your YouTube page and the fact that like people have just called on to you, and Lovecraft Country was a big part of that. Would you say?
Lovecraft Country, I would say, like that was the thing that basically got me to the point that I was even able to monetize my videos, because like I would get way more views than I had subscribers. And then with that, because the way YouTube works is they pay attention to watch time. And so also with that, like Lovecraft Country, because I would have so many views, but also my each one of my videos was like 20, 30, I think the most was almost 50 minutes. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, like you have 5,000 people pretty much watching all of the whole 50-minute video. And so then that adds up.
Yeah.
Then, the way YouTube works is you have to hit at least 4,000 watch hours in order to monetize your videos and have 1,000 subscribers. So I had 1,000 subscribers, but in terms of watch time, like I was like maybe like at the halfway point. Lovecraft Country, and I'm reviewing that, and then when people started following me, that like it like shot up. So by the time episode 7 hit, it was like, all right, you have officially got to the point that you could be in the YouTube partnership program. And I was like, oh, yeah, we can curse, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let that shit fly. So to be honest, I mean, Jonathan Majors, Journey Smollett have pretty much been almost catalyst in your success.
Yeah, Misha Green, Jonathan Majors,
Misha Green, all that.
They like if YouTube is the thing that I end up doing, like they got to get part of the flowers because they were vital to that. I would say. And granted, it's not to say I wasn't getting there without it, but like Lovecraft Country was like the gun that like really shot it off.
Now, do you think there's going to be a second season?
For the sake of my channel, I hope so. I mean, she said that they haven't officially announced anything, but she said she wants to continue.
Right. And I feel as though like from what it was, basically the standpoint of how they were doing the show and how far back in time it was, there might be a time jump to another possibly epic timeline in Black history. Who knows where? It could be the crack epidemic in the 80s, possibly with an older D or something like that. Or it could be in the early mid 60s to where probably the most trauma-filled times within Black history with the assassinations of Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King during that time. I mean, not even close to even saying that the JFK assassination and the RFK assassinations all were within that time frame. If that is the angle of the show, and as much as I don't want to relive that again and again, because a lot of shows have done that over and over and over again, and the trauma just keeps on fucking bewildering my head.
Yeah.
let's just jump to the 80s. You know what I'm saying? I could see like D being like close to her 40s, mentoring a lot of other young kids, possibly with the magic still resonating with a lot of Black children within the United States. And who knows?
Lovecraft Country, I think for the sake of like keeping the actors that they have, I don't necessarily think they're going to jump to like the 80s or anything like that, because if they do, they would have to get rid of the person that they have as D, or like Hippolyta and stuff like that. I would think, considering their age, they might be either dead or super old, and I don't know if they want to go that route, especially if they maybe don't bring Jonathan Majors back, because I don't know what's going to maybe happen with that, especially now that he's Kang the Conqueror. So there may be some conflicts with the filming schedule and stuff like that. So I think they would want to keep the actors that they have. So if they do end up doing a time skip, I think maybe it'll just be the 60s. So then that way you can have her, Letitia, have her child. The child could maybe be a little bit older.
True.
So then maybe instead of following Tick and stuff, it could be the son
That's
of
true.
Atticus.
That's true.
Since he also did write that book.
Yeah.
So
Well, I can say honestly, from my take, with Jonathan Majors basically catapulting through that show, that's probably the end of him on that show. When Marvel grabs you for about a good
yeah, a
6
good 10
movies.
years.
I have never heard of Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth doing much of anything outside of Marvel, because they were snatched up into doing so much scheduling and whatnot. And who knows how many movies the man signed up for, because Marvel just doesn't, like, unless you were like a villain in the early phase 1, phase 2 Marvel, you're in it.
And especially now that we got the whole Disney Plus stuff happening, like I heard
Right.
that they were like, now the contracts are including Disney Plus shows, so
Yeah.
you're like really in the weeds, the whole Marvel ecosystem.
Of course, of course. And to segue what I was talking about earlier, like, you don't necessarily get this name Black Gay Comic Geek for nothing. It's had to be an origin story as to why you've dived full steam into comics. Where did this come from?
I mean, for the most part, I've always been interested in like fantasy superheroes and all that other stuff. But I think the genesis of how I got into comics really started from horror movies.
Really?
Yeah, like I've always been a fan of, like, granted, a lot of these movies, because I was born in '85. So
Okay.
a lot of these movies came out right before I was born, but in the '90s and stuff like that, you always had the reruns and stuff like that on HBO, Showtime, and stuff. So I would always watch like Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, Halloween, Chucky. Like, funny enough, when I was super young, I've always wanted a Chucky doll. And my mother was like, and my mother's from Trinidad, she'd be like, hell no, you ain't bringing that damn thing in my house.
Yeah, no.
I've just always been that kid. Like, and I'm about to tell on myself to show how weird I was as a kid, but
Mhm.
but it also goes into just the fascination of that fantasy, sci-fi, horror lore. Like, I remember, and I don't know if you ever got this thing as a kid, you were told like, don't eat junk food before you go to sleep or whatever, because you'll have nightmares.
Right.
Well,
Yep.
me, I was the type of kid where I'm like, oh, is that true? So I would be eating junk food just so I could have a nightmare, because
Right.
I want to put myself in that horror world and whatever and experience it for my like, again, this is to me telling on myself. So I would
Right.
be eating Skittles and Starbursts and cakes just so I could be like, I have a nightmare, and I never did. And I was super disappointed.
Uh-huh.
But then that horror snowballed into like the Fox Saturday morning TV shows with
Okay.
Spider-Man and X-Men and Silver Surfer and Fantastic Four. So when I was super young, I didn't actually read comics
Okay.
because there wasn't really a comic store around me. And then plus, comics are expensive, and
Okay.
it wasn't like I was paying for it. But I was always interested in those characters based on my original love of horror. And so I would always follow what was going on, even with the beginning ages of the internet. I would follow what was going on in comics
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I would eventually, when like Marvel Wiki and stuff like that showed up, I would be like, okay, I might not be able to afford this right now, but I would still look up what's going on, and I'll be able to spit stuff as if you would think I read it fluently. But then eventually, once I started working and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and also once I got into college, that's when and there was a comic book store right next to my university. That's when I finally started going and like
Ah.
buying issues and stuff like that. Now, I don't want to say I'm an expert or anything. I'm not like Rob from Comics Explained or anything like that. Like, I don't read as frequently as
Ain't
they do.
nobody on that man's level.
Yeah, no. Like, for the most part, like now, most of my stuff, because most of the stuff I read is Marvel, and part of that is because I have the Marvel Unlimited app on my
Yeah.
phone, and so with that, you don't get new issues right away.
It's true.
So yeah,
So, to attest what you just said, I, being the grandson of a Barbadian man, can totally hold in familiarity of like bad mojo being in the house and watching scary movies, and they're supremely superstitious
Yes, yes.
people in the Caribbean and everything like that. So horror movies are not necessarily the niche of a lot of the older people and everything that came over from the islands, and they don't fucking feed into that spooky shit. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But another thing that you brought up, you know what I'm saying? Like I remember my mom making me watch the original Gremlins for the first time. And that whole part where you were saying like eating junk food and having it bring out nightmares, that whole folk tale that was being taught as a kid. When Gremlins came out, and the fact that if they ate food after midnight, they would turn into cocoon. She would basically like put me in front of the TV and be like, "Hey, see what happens to them motherfuckers when they eat shit after midnight? That could be you." You know what I'm saying? So I could,
Yeah, me, I was the type of kid, I'd be like, challenge accepted.
yeah, yeah, and, you know, for me, it's just me and mom. So it's like it's like an even flow. She goes to bed, I'm turning on all the scary movies. Pa, 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 pa. You know what I'm saying? Whatever was tape she had like, of course, made up tapes of horror movies and everything inside of those little like weird wooden cabinets that you had back in your house with all the VHS tapes back in the day.
Yeah.
That's what we had. 6 hours of straight horror movies that I just pop in and go nuts about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
yeah, for the most part, for me, because I was mostly an A and B student,
mhm.
I never really had, because I know a lot of people, especially coming from a Caribbean household, they had a lot of restrictions on things they couldn't watch and things they could watch and all that
Yeah,
other stuff. But for me, for the most part, I didn't have that. Like, I got to watch HBO late at night watching vampire movies, and my mother didn't really,
she ain't check in.
yeah, she didn't really check in to see what I watched. And then also part of it is because also, coming from a Caribbean household, like my mother was at work a lot of the time, so she would be working from like the time I had to wake up to go to school to damn near midnight. So for the most part, of course I'm the youngest of four brothers, so I'm the fourth. And so, the oldest is like 13 years older than me, then it's 11, then it's 5 years. So because there's such a big gap in age difference, for the most part, they were out hanging out with their friends and stuff like that and all that. So for the most part, I pretty much raised myself. So I would be
Okay.
home alone a lot of times watching like Friday. So that's also why I was able to watch whatever I
Mhm.
wanted.
Oh,
It's,
for sure. For sure. So HBCU grad,
HBCU grad, yep, FAMU,
FAMU, FAMU. Now,
which also works because because our mascot is a rattlesnake, and
yeah, yeah.
I did the Pottermore test, and I'm a Slytherin, so
Oh my God, man. The snake is enabled. Now
it's enabled.
now I've asked this question of a couple people before. Did you encounter like blurs on campus and just realize that maybe I'm not the only nerd out here?
I mean, for the most part,
Hmm.
I would say yes and no, depending on the topic. Like in terms of like the comics and everything that I'm interested in,
Yeah,
not necessarily, because I mostly I went to school for theater.
right. Okay.
And so I'm surrounded by a bunch of theater geeks, and theater. That's all we talk about. We start busting into song in the middle of the hallway and stuff like that. So that's where most of my camaraderie came from in terms of college. But in terms of like connecting with other like comic book, fantasy, nerd type of stuff, not really. Like it was just like me in the wind. Talking, hey, anybody else Buffy fans? No. Oh, okay, that's sad. And
I'm a
that's
stick.
funny. And funny enough, that's actually why I started cosplaying because, like, in my friend circle,
Okay.
I was pretty much the only one that was into the shit that I was into as much as I was into it. Like, I'll have friends that might go see an Avengers movie or whatever, and like, oh yeah, I had a really good time, but they're not like really into it. Like when Thanos showed up on screen, and I'm like, oh shit, they're doing Thanos. They're like, who is that? I'm just like, so I was just like, you know what? I need to find a new group of friends that
Right.
can
Right.
like nerd out and just talk about the minutia of comic book characters and stuff like that. And so
Uh-huh.
so that's why I started cosplaying a couple years ago. Find
Now,
other people like me.
what was it necessarily a geographic thing because you were down south as opposed to being up here on the East Coast? Because, like, we got New York Comic Con that we tend to go to once a year, and we get to see everybody, whether it's blurs, nerds, anybody within that spectrum that holds the same type of commonality and familiarity to us. Whereas maybe down south is not.
I mean, maybe that could be it. Maybe it was Florida specifically because I'm like Atlanta has like Dragon Con and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah,
So it's not like they don't have cons.
It's true.
down south, but I guess specifically just in my group of people, because I'm not going to say there were no blurs or no comic book people at
Uh-huh.
FAMU. It's just I didn't know them, so
Yeah, yeah,
at
that's
least
true.
they weren't, or if they were in the because I was going to say, or they weren't in the theater department. But if they weren't in the theater department, they didn't talk to me about it, and everybody knows what I'm into. So
Yeah, yeah, man. Now, you were a part of a very successful podcast called the Blur Vision Podcast. We happened to had on the Party Nerds, we had Jordan on the show.
yeah, you did.
It had to be, man, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think
And
this was. I think that was like right when I joined, or yeah, I think it was like right at the time that I joined.
yeah, and the thing is, like, I remember when I first got on to the Party Nerds podcast, it was like, yo, well, if I want to get familiar with just basically talking on the microphone and everything, I have to listen to y'all podcast. And this is me not knowing who you are. This is me just listening, like figuring out like camaraderie, talking back and forth, actually like executing conversation and talking about nerdy things. So instrumentally, I listened to that podcast a lot early on in order to catch wind on how to just like have a general conversation between nerdy topics.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't know that.
And now, you know what I'm saying? But well, the thing is, I found this out like maybe I'm gonna say the middle of last year, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
because I was like, wait, oh shit. like I found that. I don't think I ever relayed that to you. I was like, oh shit. I was like, wait, Michael was on the Blur Vision podcast. I was like, and how long of a stretch did you do that show?
I think Jordan had me first invited me on as a guest on in 2017, I believe.
Okay.
20. I could actually look it up right now and go in the archives because my first episode was episode 25.
Okay.
I think it was either 2017 or 2016.
Okay.
So, but
And
keep
you
talking. I'll
and
give you that.
and then it basically ran all the way until what, early 2020 or the end of 2019?
Yeah, my first episode was February 20th, 2017.
Wow. And it ran all the way to what, 2019 or the early 2020?
Uh, early 2020. We stopped because of COVID, but we actually just started re-recording
Oh
again.
shit.
Yeah, we started. We came back 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
For our first, it was like 9 months basically. It was like one of us got pregnant. It's like
Uh,
that's how long the break was. 9 month stretch. So we recorded our first episode 2 weeks ago, 9 months, and then we just recorded on Tuesday, and that episode came out today.
right.
So I guess now we're back. Maybe I don't know.
Oh wow. So the podcast is back.
Yeah. So as it seems right now.
Good, good, good. Look, this is the thing. As far as a lot of content that's out there within just this type of market, and having the ability to speak on things nerdy and have a general audience. I remember y'all had fan pages.
I mean, we still do. Like, there's
Uh,
a blurred vision history chat. Like somebody created an Instagram
right.
just called Blurred Vision Facts, and I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah, y'all had like very in-depth fans that listened to the show, almost basically took out the edit points and the times in which y'all spoke on certain things and posted them on social media. And I was like, man, I would talk to most of our guys because I think we had Jordan on the show, episode 4. I was not on the Party Nerds podcast at all, but I remember that show. And then coming later down the line, I was like, the things that are happening with that podcast, and it was ultimately instrumental in why we created ours. So we created ours in the fact that, okay, you guys had maybe just you and him shooting the shit, going back and forth about signature topics. With us, the reason it was always the party nerds because we had like 6 to 8 of us all talking at once, and most of us like yelling over each other and having these debates, damn near getting into shouting matches and whatnot. But it was a lot of inspiration drawn from y'all show. And when did you, now you saying that you started in 2017? How did you meet Jordan?
I actually met Jordan from Comic-Con that I went to.
There it
Yeah.
is.
So cosplay and stuff like that, it pretty much shaped my potential. Hopefully, I use quotes, but my eventual career, basically.
Okay.
Because there was a con, and funny enough, I actually wasn't going to go, which I'm now looking back, I'm like, I'm so glad I did. But there was, because I was supposed to go with a friend of mine, but then he canceled at the last minute and was like he couldn't go, and I was like, damn, well, I don't want to go to a freaking Comic-Con by myself, like especially not knowing anybody. But I was like, you know what? The whole point of going, because it's a small Comic-Con called Con, which is like upstate New York or
Really?
whatever. Yeah. So it wasn't like, it's not as big as New York Comic-Con or anything like that. But I was like, all right, why did you want to cosplay? The whole purpose of cosplaying is to meet people that, you didn't know, to make friends, make connections, yada, yada, yada. So I was like, if my friend can't go, just still go. You never know who you're going to meet. And so I ended up, I got in the car, I drove to New York, and I ended up going, and that's how I met Jordan.
Wow.
So
y'all met it like a small con.
It was a very small con. And Jordan was hanging out with a bunch of people. And funny enough, okay, let me actually rewind first, because I knew who Jordan was before I went to the con. And actually, me knowing who he was is why I wanted to go to the con, because he kind of inspired me. And I told him this before. He kind of inspired me to cosplay, because while I made the decision to want to cosplay, I started looking up like how to go about it and stuff like that. And I didn't really see any Black cosplayers.
It's true.
But then I ended up coming across his page. He was known as comic webhead or whatever at the time.
Okay.
And he was mostly doing like a lot of Spider-Man cosplays and stuff like that. And so when I came across his page, and this is before his like page like blew up and for him to be like Blurred Vision as he's known now.
Yeah.
And so I started following his page and stuff like that. Then I actually saw that he was going to be at Con. And so that's the reason I wanted to go in the first place.
Okay.
And then my friend couldn't make it, yada, yada, yada. So then when I went to Con and I saw him hanging out with a bunch of people, and I was just me by myself, I was just like, you know what? I just walked over to them. Yeah. Just like, hey, I just want to introduce myself or whatever. And then it took off from there.
Spurring the friendship. What started was like, yo, come be a guest on the podcast, to being basically the resident second person on that podcast.
So obviously the first time we meet, it's not like, oh yeah, take my number, bro, come over to my house and all the other stuff. It's none of that. It was just like, all right, cool to meet you, follow each other on Instagram, yada, yada, yada. Because I had like just started getting on Instagram, and I wasn't Black Gay Comic Geek back then. I was Nephilim_Rising. So that's a whole nother story. We'll talk about that. But that was because I was thinking about writing I'm still thinking of writing a fantasy book. And I was like, I think that's going to be the name of my book. And then that also corresponds with Instagram, because Nephilim, like I'm also rising on Instagram. So I was like, okay, it works.
It's true.
But then I ended up changing my name. But anyway, so yeah, so we kept running into each other at cons and stuff like that. And so because of that, we started to become more friendly and everything like that. And then eventually we exchanged numbers and we started talking more. And so he had, because to give Jordan his flowers, like, because it's not like I am the sole reason or anything like that with Blurred Vision. Like, I came on late in the process. Like, Blurred Vision was already his thing before I came on. And so the way I ended up being on the show is he had other hosts that ended up going on vacation in London. But he still wanted to record an episode, because back then, before I got on the show, he would record like maybe like once a month, or like it was like very infrequent.
Okay.
And so when they went away to London, Jordan and I, we actually went to go see John Wick 2 together in the movies. And then he was like, I actually kind of want to talk about this on the show. You want to be a guest on my podcast? Because I was a fan listening to Blurred Vision before I joined the show. And so he was like, you want to be a guest to talk about, because I was like, I want to talk about John Wick's and our previous host, they're not here. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I was nervous as hell, because I'd never done anything like this before.
True.
It's my first time, doing it. Like, sometimes I would go back and listen to my first episode, and I was like, yeah, I could hear, like, you didn't know what the fuck you were doing. And then eventually, so I was on episode 25, And then episode 26 happened. I wasn't on episode 26. And then there was a gap between episode 26 and 27. And then like he wanted to become like more frequent and stuff like that with the show, and keeping up with that schedule, like they weren't able to keep up with that. And then other stuff started happening with with the hosts. Now, I don't want to bring all that into it, but
not showing up, flaking. So you had to jump in.
So then eventually I jumped in, and then it started becoming a permanent thing. And then another person that ended up joining the show, Jamie, she became a permanent host. But then eventually Jamie ended up moving back to Korea.
Wow.
So then instead of it being me, Jamie, and Jordan, because I feel like I go back and listen to those episodes of me, Jamie, and Jordan, I feel like that was like the golden, like the three, our camaraderie together, the three of us. I was like that, like it was like beautiful. But then eventually Jamie ended up moving back to South Korea, and then it was just Jordan and I most of the show. And the only reason we stopped recording last year because coronavirus. So yeah.
It was the same with us. I think we took a 5-month break, and then it was just like, all right, fuck it, man. Look, let's just all get some microphones and some cameras and get this shit moving. I mean,
so yeah, me having a YouTube channel and all this, I wouldn't even have a YouTube channel if it wasn't for.
It's true.
I wouldn't even call myself Black Gay Comic Geek if it wasn't for being on Blurred Vision.
True. Now, when we talking about representation versus inclusivity, there's a lot of us, I guess, within the African American nerd fam that feel as though there hasn't been a lot of representation, whether it's been in comic books, whether it's been in the movies, whether it's been in maybe some of the TV shows, maybe sometimes the characters have been skewed or anything like that. And is it more so, and you could probably attest to this, is it more so people trying to be inclusive now that, like, of course, the protests have happened early on in like May, and they just wanted to be inclusive? Or is it pretty much what a lot of these companies trying to put a lot of us on? Is it representation, or is it just them saying, okay, this is just like the next big thing, let me just get my toes wet in this?
I think it's a little bit of both, a little column A, a little bit of column B, because like I could use, let me use the negative example first, because look at how big Black Panther did for Marvel. But then on the flip side, it's like in DC, you don't really see them announce it like, where's the Black superhero for DC?
Right.
So it's like, but at the same time, they'll be like, oh, well, let's do some representation, or let's be inclusive and cast like a Black Jim Gordon and a Black Catwoman. And it's like, sure, that's cool and all, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like going into the inclusive route, I feel like that's the easy answer to race swap a character. That's not to say I'm against that, fine, whatever, but at the same time, it's the easy route where it's like, instead of casting a Black, or when casting a Black Jim Gordon, instead of doing that, how about introduce Renee Montoya as Batman's police liaison? You got an Afro-Latina woman who's also a lesbian. Why does it always have to be the same? You're following the same script with Jim Gordon. Instead of introducing, instead of having casting a Black Catwoman, why not introduce Lady Shiva, like the most badass martial artist in all of DC Comics, but she's also an Asian woman.
It's true.
So it's like, I feel like they just take the easy route and just like race swap instead of introducing characters that are already there. Because like even the conversation that they talked about, there's a rumor or whatever saying that they're going to do a Static Shock movie and a Batgirl movie, but they want to release it on HBO Max as opposed to in theaters or whatever, because they think those properties are risky. Yeah. Right. But it's like, risky. What's risky? Like in the age of Black Panther, what's risky about doing a Static Shock movie? It's like Static Shock was like one of the highest grossing cartoons on Kids WB back in the early 2000s.
Right.
People are still calling for a live action Static Shock movie, like when Black Lightning and stuff like that came out and stuff like that. People are like, man, why not do Static Shock? Or please I hope they're introducing Static in Black Lightning or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then on top of that, like you have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which did very well. Like Miles Morales is a household name now because of that movie, and now the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 4 game.
Yes.
And Static Brian Michael Bendis created Brian Michael Bendis created Miles based on Static.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are y'all doing? The blueprint is already there. So it's like they're just taking the easy route by just throwing black faces in there, but not really diving down into black characters that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like DC doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, really, because I feel like DC should have been the MCU before the MCU, because they've always had the rights to their characters
Right.
long before Marvel.
And the funny thing is, like, we look at the current times with the one main DC character of African American descent in Cyborg. Now Ray Fisher has basically this long-standing grudge with them since the Justice League movie about the harassment and discrimination and prejudice that he received during that movie, to the point where now he's been written out of the script
Yeah.
in the Flash movies. So it's like your own, pretty much probably like the biggest one to date as far as DC's concerned, as far as African American characters that they were going to carry over.
Not even the biggest one, the only one they got.
The only
Cyborg was
one
the
they
only.
took so far,
Yeah.
they treated like shit.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, I'm not even sure where they're gonna go.
So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, the question, it's like, how committed to you are how committed to you are you how committed are you to this,
Yeah,
to this push for so-called diversity?
it's true.
And not even just in front of the camera. Like, what are you doing behind the camera? Who's greenlighting these projects? Who are you hiring for directors? Who's part of the board, and all this other stuff? And that's the problem I have with, like, a lot of these companies, where they'll release like black squares during like the Black Lives Matter protests, or they'll change their logo to like the black fist, or even like video game companies and stuff like that,
Yep.
or Marvel or DC or anything like that. During like Gay Pride Month, they'll like put a rainbow in their logo, but then it's like,
Yeah.
but specifically with video games, but it's like, where are the leading gay characters in your video games? You're putting a rainbow flag, but where are the gay super or whatever, like gay Laura Crofts or whatever, gay leading characters in your video games? It's not. The only time you'll put one in there is like if it's a create your own type of character. It's the same problem I have with black characters. You'll have a create your own character where it's like, oh, if you're black, you can make a black character,
Right.
but you're not making the character actually black.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true. And now we're looking at a time where the representation that's being like thrown out there in front of the screen is a little bit skewed a little bit. So when in your perspective, looking at a lot of gay characters within comic books and how they've been introduced, or how maybe they haven't swayed towards that fact, like when you talked about Renee Montoya, the Question, lesbian character, not notified as a lesbian character, just almost they had her in Birds of Prey, Rosie Perez playing that character as a sort of assertive, dominant character without the notification that she was gay.
Yeah.
And it was like absent
It
at
was
all.
completely absent.
Completely absent. So now, probably, what was it? Next week? Next week, we're going to get WandaVision.
Yep.
We're going to get the introduction of Wiccan, Wiccan and Speed, basically.
Wiccan and Speed.
Vision and Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch's kids. Wiccan was introduced in the comics as a gay character. How are they going to basically portray this? Now, there's a couple ways they could go about this. They could just keep it a kid and not do anything with it, which would suck.
I think for WandaVision, they're going to probably stay kids, but I think eventually,
yeah,
they'll age them up, because it seems like the writers on the wall that they're going Young Avengers route.
Right. And that's the thing. When they do, or if they do, decide to carry on those characters to where they're actually aging up, growing into adolescence, are they then going to basically bring in those type of emotions, those type of personalities that basically got put into perspective in the books? Because we all know Hulkling, we all know Wiccan. I think you just put up a post like a couple days ago about Wiccan and Hulkling.
Yeah, it was an art.
And the thing is, even in the DC universe, Midnight and Apollo, if they really wanted to have a full-on LGBT character within the DC universe, they could go that route. That it's there if they wanted to do so. And the thing is, it's not like they created those characters in a time where they would sell. Those characters are still pretty much in circulation in a lot of comic books now. Yet, when it comes to putting them on screen, they hesitate.
Mm-hmm. And I've been saying, like, in the age of Deadpool, going back to Midnight and Apollo, with Deadpool being like the biggest R-rated movie ever,
Yeah,
like and the thing about Hollywood is they always try to follow trends. I'm like, you have these two characters in Midnight and Apollo, very rated R type of characters, and they're basically the Batman and Superman of Wildstorm. Granted, it's owned by DC now, but it's like they're very rated R characters and they're superheroes. It's like, why not have them, like, give them a like HBO Max series, a Midnight and Apollo HBO series, and then you could have your cake and eat it too by saying, oh yeah, guys, we're getting our diversity card by introducing these gay superheroes,
yeah.
you know, but and then also following the Deadpool route, and now you're gonna get all the media attention because like DC is the first out of Marvel or whatever to introduce the first gay superheroes to get their own solo television series or movie.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for a television series, but it doesn't really matter. But like,
Because it's more storyline, it's more content.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I'm just like, what do you like? I'm like, it's like the money is there. Like, I don't understand who's like Walter Hamada. What are you doing? Like, I feel like it's an easy answer, but apparently it's not because they're not doing it.
mm-hmm. Do you feel as though there's been other characters that have been misrepresented, whether it's been gay characters, African American characters within both the big two?
I mean, how much time you got?
Give me a couple examples.
I mean, well, I could talk about gay characters. I could talk about the misrepresentation of like when Black Panther and Storm first got together. Like, we could go on and on, even just like how they treat their black characters. Period. In like Marvel, I feel like DC in the sense is more. And I actually had this conversation on Clubhouse.
Okay.
I feel like DC is a little bit more willing, specifically talking about black characters. They're a little bit more willing to go the more controversial, and I use controversial in air quotes because to me it's not controversial, but I guess for them it is.
Mm-hmm.
The controversial route with like black characters. Like think about books like The Other Side of DC.
Yeah, it just recently, it just was released, maybe like what, 4 months ago.
Yeah, so I feel like they're willing to go that route in DC more so than they are in Marvel with their black characters because you don't really see anything like that with Marvel. And I was saying for a while, like I would like to see Storm as one example. Like I would like to see them dive more into the intersectionality of her identities. Like, yes, she's a mutant. People hate mutants. There's anti-mutant rights groups and stuff like that. The Friends of Humanity, I believe, is one of them. And then there's other ones. But she's also a woman. So I want to see her deal with sexism and stuff like that, especially in a, male-dominated X-Men school. But then on top of that, she's a black woman. So you mean to tell me nobody in the, even just in the, because she mostly spends her time, well, it's not the mansion anymore, it's Krakoa. But you mean to tell me nobody, you mean like Jean didn't like try to touch her hair, like, oh, this is something, can I touch your hair real quick? Such a pretty girl for a black,
Oh my
like,
God.
you mean to tell me nobody in the mutant society, like, said something slick off the top of her mouth that maybe she want to go have a conversation with Monet. And that's another thing, like when they write these black characters, not even just in comics, just in film in general.
Yeah.
Like you about to get me on my soapbox.
Do
But
it.
like it's unrealistic for black people to be in spaces with a whole bunch of white people, even if you got white friends and not yada yada yada. But it's unrealistic for us to be in these spaces and not check up on each other.
It's true.
Even like a criticism that I had with like The Walking Dead, like you mean to tell me Michonne and Sonequa Martin Green's character, I can't think of her name,
Mm-hmm.
and what was the other guy's name? Tyler, not the big guy that ended up dying.
T-Dog or whatever the hell his name was.
Not T-Dog. He was like, fuck, whatever. But you mean to tell me there was never not one moment, especially dealing with the zombie apocalypse and stuff like that, that they just came together to maybe just sit down, maybe just sit down and drink coffee or even eat lunch or dinner or whatever together, to just have a conversation with each other.
It's true because and it's funny.
Braid each other's hair or whatever.
You're saying this, and now it's like is ticking in my head. I was like, wait, I've watched Walking Dead, and I was like, I don't think I've ever seen like symmetry between or conversation pieces between the two black characters before. It's always been interjected with the white characters.
Yeah, like if they're talking to each other, it's in a group.
Yeah, Yeah, like they never really like had side conversations amongst themselves, maybe about upbringing or certain things that maybe were common to the two characters or anything like that. Damn, that fucking sucks. Hold up.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly. I'm like, that's unrealistic. You mean tell me like Storm's not going to hang out with Misty Knight every so often? That's supposed to be one of her best friends.
It's true.
Like we're and granted, I understand like comics, you know, superheroes. It's all about the big battle. That's why, especially Marvel, like they keep doing an event after an event after an event, which is tired to me because I'm like, if everything's an event, nothing's an event.
Hmm.
But I would like to see like part of the reason that X-Men was so popular was the soap opera aspect of it. Some of the best issues of X-Men is them using their mutant powers to like play baseball or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not always about fighting sentinels or going to space. It's about the interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, some of it is based on the prejudice that they seek just going throughout their everyday lives.
Yeah, and with it being about prejudice, like you mean to tell me like Storm's not facing prejudice as a black woman?
Yeah.
Bishop's not facing prejudice as a black man?
Yeah.
Monet's not facing prejudice. Iceman's not facing prejudice as a gay as a gay mutant outside. And granted, I know they talked about it with his parents, but like I mean, in the mutants themselves, because just because you're a mutant, like we have gay white people, that doesn't mean they're not racist as hell. They're oppressed. They're oppressed, but guess what? They're still racist, and sometimes they're worse. Sometimes they're worse than straight white people because they're like, oh, I'm not. You know, they think just because they got some level of oppression, they're not like them. Nah, motherfucker, you just as, if not worse.
You know what? I knew that was coming. But on a serious tip, like it almost like it almost puts into perspective that when a lot of these comics were written and you see how they don't want to pretty much pick and choose from source material because they don't want to be predictable. So when they make these movies and TV shows, I get it. You know, like for most of us comic heads, when we watch these shows, like I don't want to like be the one shouting in the theater. Watch this part right here. He's about to die. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I could do that. You know what I'm saying? When I watched Infinity War and then Endgame, like I wanted it to be too predictable in a sense. Like when I saw Hulk being getting knocked out by Thanos and then flying from the spaceship, and then all of a sudden he lands in Doctor Strange's house and everything. I read Infinity Gauntlet. I know that that's not the Hulk that's falls through that house. It's
Silver Surfer.
Yeah. So I was like, so when I saw that scene, I was like, yo, I think I was like one of the only ones in the theater.
Remember, they didn't have the rights to Silver Surfer.
Yeah, they didn't have the rights to Silver Surfer. So I was like, man, that's some bullshit. I was like, I said that like loud as hell in the movie theater, and people was like, what's supposed to happen? I was like, it's not supposed to be him. That's supposed to be him going through like, so they don't want to, I get it. They don't want the source material to be predictable. But the thing is, when it comes to the characters' personalities, you can still feed into that. And the thing is, the personalities bringing the conversations, with bringing the dialogue. And then when you got good writers behind the shit, I always said, okay, if you don't want them to be as predictable as the comic books, get the writers from the specific comic themselves to maybe just switch up the dialogue so it doesn't look as predictable as it used to be. So if you have the person that created Iceman and created the personality that made him a gay character, create a story around that. You know what I'm saying? Or if you're going to do Midnighter and Apollo, we're in an age of where we can do R-rated superhero movies, create the dynamic to where it's put into a show perspective and let the personalities roll. It doesn't have to be like this all spacious thing to where like people are just going to be offended by it. Make it right. You know what I'm saying? If they could do Lovecraft Country, or I'm sorry, if they could do The Watchmen and do a series of it and interject African American characters in it, and it was done well, they can obviously do the same shit here. And that is another DC property.
Yes.
I tell you, man, this shit.
I would say, I'm gonna push back a little bit because I agree with you and I also disagree with you.
Okay.
I agree in the sense that yes, they need to have more comic book writers somewhat involved on these movies, because I think part of the problem is, and I'm gonna go to Star Wars as one example. Good. So if you watched, I don't know if you watched the Disney Investors Day meeting when they were announcing all the shit that was happening with Lucasfilm and stuff like that. one of the
The recent one that happened like a couple of months ago or a month ago.
yeah. So
Okay.
like one of the properties that they said they're going to do is a show called Acolyte,
Yes.
and it's supposed to follow like a Sith apprentice or whatever. And I read that the person that's show running that show,
Hmm.
she said she never really been into Star Wars and had no real inclination to Star Wars universe or anything like that. So it's like you're hiring these people that aren't really comic book fans, or maybe or like a Zack Snyder who read one like he read Frank Miller's Dark Knight, and
Uh,
you could tell that's what he
you can
made
tell.
Batman.
Yeah.
But yet you read nothing else because like Dark Knight, that's an Elseworld story. Or even when you look at his version of Wonder Woman, I don't know if you saw that picture with her with the 3 decapitated heads.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, that's an Elseworlds version of Wonder Woman. That's not the Wonder Woman that's in the comics. So it's like, if you actually get people that, wrote comics involved in these movies, you can help better craft and shape these movies better. But on the flip side,
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily always work, because take Jeff Johns.
Oh,
Jeff Johns and Patty Jenkins,
you're absolutely right.
they wrote Wonder Woman 1984. Jeff Johns is a comic book person. And granted, I know you hated Wonder Woman 1984. I didn't hate it.
You see me
Me,
hiding behind this mic?
me and Frankie have the same. I didn't hate Wonder Woman 1984, but I know it has a fuck ton of problems.
Yes, it does.
And guess who? And again, guess who helped write it? Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns. Again, Patty Jenkins not a comic book, but Jeff Johns Jeff Johns is a comic book person.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, yeah, I agree with that, but then again, so it's
Yeah.
like a little bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you got me there. That's true. And then the young lady that you're talking about in the Star Wars series, actually fantastic. Frankie got to interview her, Laura Hadley, if I'm getting that correct.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm,
It's
I'm,
something Headley.
Yes, but Frankie actually got a chance to interview her. I think it was maybe like a couple of months ago. And yeah, she is not like big into the lore of Star Wars. It's like basically saying, okay, the person that made all those Star Wars novels, Timothy Zahn, who basically after the original 3 Star Wars movies started writing all these novels about Star Wars lore and pretty much like making tons and tons of backstory books about it and everything like that. That man has no inclusion in any of the movies whatsoever. But
Mm-hmm.
his characters are all throughout the damn movies.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's cool in a sense because okay, it was like I understand that some characters that have a popular backstory, like Boba Fett in Mandalorian, him coming back and having this reception to where it was like a 40-year-old theory as to did he die in the Sarlacc pits in Return of the Jedi, and then all of a sudden that question gets answered when Mandalorian comes back and it was like, oh, he did live, and it was like, for if you're like maybe like around like 50 years old, you're like, wow, like I never thought I'd see the day. Like I saw Boba Fett fall in the pit. That was one of the first movies I seen. I saw it in a drive-through in 1984. I was 5 years old. You know what I'm saying? So like I remember Boba going in that pit, thought it was over, and then to see it come into fruition, of course, this long in the future was big, but to see those characters evolve and then they kind of resurface. But we know, and that's beyond the point, but to know that there's a slew of characters out there that have amazing storylines that they just don't want to introduce for some odd reason because we got to understand that it's still a business. They honestly look at characters and be like, is this going to make money? Like there was always that big problem with Deadpool, where but it took for somebody that was really passionate about it in Ryan Reynolds to like basically go on the Tonight Show and say the test footage leaked. I'm not saying,
Leaked.
yeah, he said the test footage leaked because I remember it was on YouTube and it was like the test footage leaked. I'm not going to say it was me, but it was probably either me, the writers, or one of the producers that put it out there. And then it was a good move by them because of the reception that happened when the test footage leaked. It caused them to make the movie.
Yeah, had that test footage not leaked, we
Yeah,
would have no Deadpool.
we would have no Deadpool. If somebody didn't go rogue that day and decide to throw it on YouTube, and then all of a sudden it catastrophically like just the views went up to like 10 million in like a half hour. And it was
Hmm.
like, yo, and then the word got out, and this is the age of social media where everybody just started like pushing out these pings. Did you see the Deadpool test footage? Did you see Deadpool test footage? And I remember we talked about it on the podcast. It was like, yo, the Deadpool test footage, even though it was like in black and white, and it looked like stick figures and everything, like throughout this whole video and whatnot, it propelled the character to get shown to a broader audience, because then people who didn't know of the character got to see the character on the screen and realize, yo, this character's cool as shit.
Yeah. And I think like, and of course, yeah, I get it. It's business, yada yada yada. And then movies are risky. Like they thought freaking John Carter from Mars is going to make a whole bunch of money. Now,
Oh my
granted that's their fault that it didn't make that much money because they marketed it terribly. And I feel like they should have called it John Carter from Mars as opposed to just John Carter. Like I remember even watching the trailers, I was like, what the hell is this movie about? And
God.
then when I actually watched the movie, I was like, this is actually pretty good.
An actual Confederate soldier getting shipped to Mars from a magic stone and becoming a warlord. A Confederate soldier becoming a warlord on another planet.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a pretty good movie. It was decent.
It was interesting, but
Yeah,
the schematics behind it was like,
yeah, I get it.
all right, he conquers a race, a Confederate soldier, huh?
Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
problematic. But I'm just talking about just the movie itself. Like,
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think it should have flopped as hard as it did. So I mean, I get people being scared of certain movies or like movies that think are going to make money, like Aragon and all these other movies that ended up flopping.
sure.
So it's like, yeah, I get that mentality, but at the same time, in this age of streaming, which I get the streaming wars are still pretty new, I shouldn't be hearing any more terms of this project being risky. How many flops do
Tons,
Netflix have?
tons.
But yet still Netflix is still Netflix. Netflix stock is still going up.
Yep. Netflix is in the content business. So the thing is, they have to have multiple things going on at one time. Not only do they have the reruns of your favorite movies or your favorite TV shows, but they have all their originals, their original shows, their original movies that they put out there and everything like that. And the thing is, they it's almost like Netflix isn't afraid to put content out there, even if it's shitty,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because they understand that they have to put that out there.
Yeah, because you don't know what's going to hit.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still a little salty that they got rid of Sense8, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Like I think Netflix introduced me to a lot of Korean, Spanish TV shows that I didn't even know were the shit until I watched them.
Yeah, yeah,
A lot of foreign language films that I did not know were going to be that tight
yeah,
until I watched them, and I was like, damn. I need to catch up on my Korean history right here. This
yeah.
is
There's
amazing.
actually like Train to Busan.
Train to Busan. Oh my god.
There's a zombie movie, another zombie movie that I reviewed on my YouTube channel called #Alive. That was Korean drama. There's another one called The Cult. Like, yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah, it's like, come on. Like, but the thing is, they're in the content business. So it's like, hey, there's these amazing movies in a whole nother country that we can put out there. We're not sure how the American public is going to receive them, but those are the chances that Netflix takes, to where a conglomerate like Marvel and DC, well, Marvel is Disney and DC is Warner Brothers.
mhm.
So it's almost like there's checkpoints that have to go on. Like when they say that the Justice League had all these multiple checkpoints, that after Zack Snyder left because of a horrible situation, I think his daughter died.
His daughter committed suicide.
Daughter committed suicide.
Yeah,
He leaves the project. Joss Whedon, who made the Avengers, jumps in without preparation. Movie's about to come out, like they already have a release date. I think they pushed it up once for him.
yeah.
And
He wanted another year and a half, and they were like, no.
yeah, and I can't say that I'm empathetic towards the guy, because every actor working on that film said that he was a shitty person.
Yeah,
But the thing is, he had bosses that he had to talk to, and they were probably jumping down his throat saying, get this shit done. I could give a damn how these actors feel. This is going to be the biggest movie of all time. So get them on the ball, get the movie done. We'll get our editors in here and the producers and whatnot and everything. And we'll do a little test footage to see exactly how it's going to go. And it felt sped up.
yeah. And
But
then And then when you learned the backstory of like
Oh,
the executives pushing Justice League out because they
yeah,
wanted to get their bonuses and all that other bullshit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you like it felt rushed. And then when it came out, it was like, okay, I realized that they wanted to follow the whole connected universe thing that Marvel was doing, but then it was like, this is horrible. Like, come on, y'all. Like, Aquaman hasn't even been introduced yet until this movie. Flash hasn't been introduced yet until this movie. You have Ben Affleck's second run as Batman. He still hasn't had a solo movie yet within
Mm-hmm.
this universe. He's had a partnered movie and he's got a team movie. No solo movies within the DCEU. I have to constantly remind people that all the time that there is no Batman solo movies within the current DCEU.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Nolan does not do Batman movies for the DCEU.
No,
This Robert Pattinson movie
it's
is
not
not within the DCEU. Ben
correct.
Affleck is their Batman, and he has no solo movies. He's been in the Suicide Squad movie in a cameo. He was a partner movie with Batman vs Superman, where basically it was the events of after Man of Steel, to where he just was pissed and realized that this inhuman man cannot be doing this much damage and I have to put an end to it. And then all of a sudden we get a Justice League movie where they have to just resurrect a zombie Superman at, out of nothing and fight a demonic cosmic entity that's basically been called on by a preteen in Lex Luthor. Yeah, these are the things that like bug me out, but this is what happened. This is
Social network Luthor.
Oh my God, man. And I get it. That's comic accurate because there was a section of the Justice League where they had a younger, more vile Lex Luthor in it. But him in that character mode, whoa, man.
Yeah, he was more the Riddler than he was
Yeah,
Lex
that's what
Luthor.
it seemed like to me. The whole dialogue of how he was brought out. That is not the Lex Luthor I know.
Yeah.
You know,
Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne. Oh.
oh, it was come on, man. Yo, it was killing me, man. But ultimately, to get back to it, where would you like to see things as far as how representation has to form within movies, storylines going forth, whether it's within LGBT characters, whether it's within Black characters, and how can we? Is there solutions to the problem?
It's a heavy question. I don't solutions. I would be like, they just need to stop being afraid and just do it. Like even the controversy with Black Panther, like they were supposed to be, they was I believe they were supposed to introduce Anika and Ayo,
Ah,
to lesbian Dora Milaje, and then they took it out.
yes.
Why? Granted, they're not even main characters, but
And it was supposed to be a small scene.
and it's supposed to be a small scene.
Yeah.
Oscar Isaac, and I'm still pissed off about it. Oscar Isaac has been pushing for Poe and Finn to be like lovers in the Star Wars universe. He's like, the writing is on the walls. Like, if you go back and look at interviews, he's always talking about it. He's always like, even on Ellen, like
Mhm.
Ellen was like, so he made a comment. It was like, yeah, I was playing romance in the show. I'm not gonna say to who, but
Yeah.
I definitely was. But like, it seems like the execs don't really
Was
want to go.
it's funny because just had a conversation with Fantastic Frankie about Star Wars, and I said, didn't it seem odd that they started those last three Star Wars movies with a interracial relationship in maybe like the first movie, but then it was like a full stop in the Last Jedi, like it was gone. But you started to see this dynamic between him and Poe, between Finn and Poe.
See, I saw it in the first movie.
You saw it in the first one. See, I didn't see it in the first movie.
Well, when you sometimes when
Like in
you're
the
in
first
it,
movie,
when sometimes when you're in it, when you're in the community, because I like every gay person I know that's into Star Wars, like they like the whole hashtag Storm Pilot. That's been going since the first movie.
Ah,
And even that scene where Poe tried to give Oscar Isaac, Finn tried to give Poe the
the Jack.
jacket back. Yeah, like Oscar, he said he was playing romance in that scene. Like he was like, "Nah, keep it. It looks better on you." And like he bit his lip, like, you sexy right there.
See, now I'm gonna have to
You
look
have to
back
go
at
back.
that.
You have to go
I
back and
gotta go
look.
back and look. I ain't even see a lip bite
It's,
whatsoever.
he bit his lip, and so
No.
the the hashtag Storm Pilot has been going on since the first movie, and then even if you like break it, like they saved each other's lives and all this other stuff.
Okay.
Poe kind of gave him his identity because before Poe he was FN 2187. So it's like the romance angle is like it's there.
Yeah,
It's there. Like the writing is on the wall. They saved each other's life. Poe was about to get executed by the First Order until Finn helped save him. Like
man,
when they first saw each other, how excited they were. Poe, Finn, and they ran to each other. What is that? What does that remind you of? Every like romance movie, like
right.
running to it. It's like the writing is on the wall.
It's Jack and Titanic.
And granted, everybody wants to focus on him, pining after Ray, and sure that's there too. So you can say Finn is maybe bisexual, but at the same time, I feel like the real story is between Finn and Poe. But then, like again, like I said, you look at a bunch of interviews with Oscar Isaac. He talks about it all the time. I can send you a link after we're done. And he literally said the higher ups, they didn't want to do it. And I saw somebody say, I've never seen a straight man be so upset that he never got to play gay. Because it wasn't just like in one interview that he did. It's like multiple interviews that he kept saying, like,
right.
while promoting the movie, like, I want, like, this is an obvious choice, but they don't want to go this route. Instead, going back to the inclusion thing, they want to show like a 30-second lesbian kiss at the end of The Rise of Skywalker that if you cut it, it takes, like, that does nothing. Or they want to do like Beauty and the Beast. At the very end of the movie, you see LeFou dancing with another man. But it's like, am I supposed to be happy about that?
Yeah, these are things that you don't see. And the thing is, how long are these clips? 2 seconds?
Yeah, 2 seconds.
Like,
and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be happy about, I got my representation now because I got a 2-second dance, two men dancing in the corner or whatever. But like, right. What the fuck does that do with the did that have anything to do with the story?
Right.
Like, no, fuck you. And that's right. And all of that is why I called myself Black Gay Comic Geek on the internet, because I want you to know, like, exactly who I am and what you're getting into when you see me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm Black and I'm gay and I like comics. I'm a nerd, basically.
There it is, man.
So, because like, yeah, even Marvel and DC, when it comes to like Black gay superheroes, it's like virtually none.
It's true. It's true.
You got Prodigy, who's bisexual, so it's not to say he doesn't count.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's why I'm actually like looking forward to seeing how this Wiccan thing is going to work out with WandaVision. Like as far as how his upbringing, are they going to actually include it to the point where it's actually shown on screen in that foreground? Like, is that going to be the frame as his adolescence comes, that it's going to be, he is a gay character? Is this the personality that is going to be surveyed amongst the audience?
And I hope it's not something that they gloss over, because this is a problem I also have with Hulkling and Wiccan in the comics as well. And just gay characters in general. It seemed like they'll introduce a gay character, but then, and it's the same thing happened at Arrow when they changed Mr. Terrific. Granted, I have a lot of problems with what they did with Mr. Terrific. Like, you change his sexuality from what you did in the comics, but then you still don't do anything with it.
Right.
Mr. Terrific is like the third smartest man in DC Comics, but yet in the show, he's still taking second fiddle to Felicity.
Right.
He's an Olympic level athlete, gold medalist, on par with Nightwing. But yet you put him in the show, and then you make him gay on top of that, and he's like the weakest one on the show. He was the one always getting his ass beat.
It was hard.
So it's like, so what are you trying to say? Gay people can't fight? Because that's essentially the message that you're saying in the show, by switching his sexuality to make him gay. Because Mr. Terrific isn't gay in the comics.
No.
So then you make him gay, but then you make him the weakest one.
Right.
What are you telling people? And then also with that, like going to my original point
Mhm.
is part of the problem that I have with like how they introduce gay characters in comics is like you never get to see them actually court each other. So like you introduce Mr. Terrific, he automatically has a husband. You introduce Wiccan and Hulkling, they're automatically together. But then when you get to like Kate Bishop and Eli Bradley, you got to see them falling for each other in the Young
Oh
Avengers.
yeah,
Stature and
flirty.
yeah, Stature and Vision. You
Hmm.
got they started because they first got on a team. They started flirting and all that other stuff. But then eventually she started falling for Aqualad, and there was a love triangle between them. And you got to see the courtship, the back and forth, the eventual falling in love. But Wiccan and Hulkling, they were automatically together. It's like, oh, you guys are already boyfriends. You never got to see them go on a date. You
It's
never got
true.
to. It wasn't until 10 years after their introduction in the Young Avengers that they actually got to kiss on screen or in the comic panel.
In a panel,
And like
and then
even to this day, granted, we know that they met on the Young Avengers, but we didn't know, like, we still to this day don't know, like, maybe like who asked, like them, and they got them married now, and I have a whole problem with that that we can get into with that as well. But like even to this day, we don't know like who asked who out, like who, how did they find out that one was gay, and like
huh?
where's that story? It's like it's the easy route, like you'll introduce a gay character, but then you won't give them the same level of like romantic
Yeah.
or whatever, the same. I'm like running on like I'm just
Nah, man.
running, so I'm like losing my words now because I'm
Nah,
like that.
it's true. I mean, what you're saying is true. They don't initialize the flirting in it. They don't. Nobody's radar is up as far as like the dialogue is concerned to even enable any type of courtship. They're the conversation pieces in which they're having to where possibly a date could ensue, to where how TV series always basically like draw out the drama that escalates within the emotions of the two characters in which they maybe come together. Maybe it's a traumatic episode, maybe it's they don't do that. Damn, man, you hipping me to some shit. Serious.
And
Serious.
then even them, like, again, I have my problems with them marrying them off. Like, I know a lot of gay people are happy about it, yada yada yada, but I hate it.
Hmm.
And it's not to say that, because they're supposed to be what, like 19, 20.
Yeah, they're super young.
They're super young. They're the Young Avengers,
Yeah.
17, 18, 19. They haven't really said what their age was, but I guess when they were first introduced, they were like 16, 17.
Hmm.
But comic logic, like time and stuff like that, like you don't know how much time has
Right.
passed. But like I feel like the easy answer was to marry them off because they didn't really know what to do with them.
And the thing is, yet, even though this is happening, we still have to have issues within the comics where they do go into battle. What
Yeah.
happens then?
And I mean, I
Yeah.
get people in real life get married when they're young. People in real life get married at like 17, 18, yada yada yada. I get that. But at
Mhm.
the same time, it happens a lot with like gay characters. Again, like I said, Mr. Terrific, he's already married off because
Yeah.
they don't want to show him maybe because I always thought like the chemistry that he had with Ragman, I was like, I feel like they should have a connection,
Hmm.
Ragman and Mr. Terrific. But
Hmm.
instead of doing that, you automatically have him married. But then you have his husband not really part of the show.
Hmm.
So then that way you don't really have to deal with him being gay. You could just say, oh, we got a gay character, but you could push it to the side. And that's not to say I want to see like Mr. Terrific butt fucking on the fucking like having sex on Arrow and stuff like that. But it's like I want to see some like the same level that you pay attention to like Arrow and Felicity or Dinah and her love interest or Wild Dog and his wife, and then he has like I want to see the same thing with gay characters. So it's like you married off Wiccan and Hulkling just to like because you feel like you don't want to deal with it.
Hmm.
But it's like, but what about like, and it's not to say they have to cheat or anything like that, but like think of the drama that Peter Parker has gone through with like Mary Jane throughout the years.
Oh yeah. I
And
mean,
yeah, eventually their end game is that they're gonna get married, they're gonna have kids, they're gonna have Mayday Parker
yep.
or whatever. She's gonna be the new Spider Woman or whatever. But at the same time, it's like there's some drama. Even somebody like Sue and Reed, they've been married from the beginning, but there's always
Oh, there's
something.
friction. Come on, man.
Yeah,
It was how many other superheroes have flirted with Sue Richards and have wanted to get with that Namor for
yeah.
instance.
Namor, for
And,
instance.
and like, bruh, like if he had his way, he would. Like, man.
Even with that, you got to see Sue and Reed. That maybe they'll go on a
Yep.
date every so often. They'll do this.
Yep.
They'll leave the Fantastic Four so they can work on their marriage or do, you know, there's
Hmm.
always something that focuses on them as a couple.
Yep.
Whereas like
Absolutely.
Wiccan and Hawkins, it's like, oh, let's just marry them off, and then you don't see them anymore. And it's only recently that they're starting to resurface in
Hmm.
comics, and mostly it's only because WandaVision.
Yeah, and I guess in that type of sense, the way that the writers are writing it, I guess from the executive standpoint and the editor standpoint, they feel like, okay, let's just make history here and just push for the wedding. And then all of a sudden that becomes the storyline. It's no longer the story within the comic. It's a storyline from that panel and how that looks. Put that on social media and be like, look, we made history.
Yep.
Check this shit out.
And let's
You
be
know,
done with it.
let's be done with it. And that's it. So all of a sudden, everybody gets their little like impressions and social media clips. Look what happened. Look what Marvel did. That's excellent.
Yeah.
And then you got real like real LGBT people who are looking at it like, that's it. Like they just married like some two characters and went on with it.
Yeah, it's the same shit they did with North Star, where they had a big event.
Oh, from
North
Alpha
North
Flight.
Yeah, North Star's marrying his husband. But I'm like, when's the last fucking time you seen North Star in a comic?
Uh, I'm going to say mid '90s.
So it's like, we're like, who cares?
It's like, yeah,
I'm like, sure, it's great. Yeah, you got a gay couple marrying, but then it's like his husband is not even a superhero. So it's like,
no.
I don't care about his husband. Like, who is he? I've never seen, like, it would be one thing if like there was like a long stretch of run where you got to see North Star maybe meet Kyle, and then
Right.
like you saw the trauma and trials, and but then finally after all these years later, we're making it, guys. We're getting married. Oh, congratulate! Like, oh shit, we're about to have a first gay couple, and we've been with these characters, so
Right.
we know what they've been through. So like when
That's
Peter
somebody
Parker,
off the street.
when Peter, yeah, basically it's like I got these cheeseburgers, man. That's how I felt. It's like when Peter Parker and Mary Jane finally got married, that was a celebration because we know what they've been through.
Oh
We've
yeah.
been with these characters.
It was almost like 20, 30 years after the fact when they got.
Exactly.
They were
So
like
it's like
boyfriend and girlfriend forever.
you've had I'm drawing a blank of the word, an investment
Uh-huh.
in their marriage.
It's true.
So it mattered.
Yeah.
But like what they're doing specifically with like, and again, I thought the same thing with Black Panther Storm. With that, it's like there's no investment.
No.
Like, and I get a lot of hate for this because a lot of people like get upset with my take of like Black Panther Storm because like, oh yeah, but it's, you know, Black representation. It's the only major Black couple in
They're
comics
like
that are
the two,
married.
yeah, they're like the two
And
biggest
but
black characters in Marvel.
but then they'll try to say like, oh yeah, well, because I'm like, it came out of nowhere. They're like, no, it didn't, because Storm and T'Challa knew each other when they were kids, and they actually lost their virginity to each other. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. That ended up being retconned in later on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, there hasn't been that much interaction between Storm and T'Challa
No.
throughout the years. Maybe they had a history together, but they don't have a present together. Like, I personally was more of a fan of Wolverine. I'm more of a fan of Storm and Wolverine,
Oh, of their relationship.
of their relationship, because
They grew up in the same mansion together.
they grew up in the same mansion together. They saved each other's lives. They fought together. They helped each other. When Wolverine first joined the X-Men, the only person he listened to was Storm.
Mm.
And she said, the only person you will pop your claws for is me. Because that's like when she was the leader of the X-Men.
Right.
And he listened. Wolverine wasn't listening to nobody but her.
Mm.
When Storm lost her powers, it was Wolverine that got her mojo back. It was Wolverine that trained her how to fight and gained her confidence back. And it was after her interaction with Wolverine, that's what gave her the confidence to challenge Cyclops for leadership of the X-Men, which she won without her powers.
Mm.
When Storm was on her deathbed from like dying from, I believe it was during Extreme X-Men run and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It was Wolverine at her bedside, helping her get her strength back. T'Challa wasn't there.
Wasn't even a thought.
Yeah, it wasn't even a thought. And then circle back when Wolverine lost his healing factor and was, you know, thinking of committing suicide and lost his confidence and stuff like that. It was Storm that basically came and basically gave him his confidence to continue to live on.
Mm.
So it's like,
You say you know. You say you don't read comics, bro. It's like you need to chill out.
I'm saying I don't. I'm not. Again, you put me next to Rob or something like that. I'm like, yeah, I don't know
bro,
that. I don't
bro,
know that.
but you know
I
what
don't
you're
know that.
talking
I don't
about.
know that. I don't know that. I don't know that.
You know what you're talking about, though. God damn. No, but that's what's happening.
So I know a lot of people aren't fans of the Wolverine Storm relationship because they're like, he's a runt. He doesn't deserve her and all this other stuff. But I'm like, no, they challenge each other. They change each other. They infect each other. Like, yeah, Wolverine is trash ultimately, but it's like in terms of their relationship, like it
They fit.
makes sense to me.
Makes
It
sense.
does.
Uh-huh. Damn. Damn, Mike. All
And
right.
granted, I get it because I'm like, in terms of, because I'm also a person that's like, I'm tired of seeing interracial relationships in movies, comics, and all that other stuff. And again, I take this out of real life. If this is real life,
Mm-hmm.
you love who you love. I don't give a shit. But in terms of like movies, video games, comics, novels, it seems like that's the go-to. They're always making it's white and somebody else, white and black, white and Asian, white and Latina, white and Native. But it's like, so I get that sentiment of not wanting to see Storm with somebody white, but it's like for this particular, you got to take it on a case by case basis. For this
Because
particular,
it's a history.
yeah, for this particular relationship, I like even jumping forward to issue of comics when Wolverine was clashing with Black Panther. This is back when he lost his powers. And I wish I remember the exact dialogue, but like Wolverine was coming after T'Challa, basically like, you don't deserve her. You think you could control? Because he was saying something about something about Storm shouldn't be doing this and Storm shouldn't be doing that. And he's
Right.
like, that's your problem right there. You think you could control her? She's not somebody to be controlled. She's independent. I wish I knew the exact line of dialogue,
Right.
but you talk. Let me see if I can find it.
Now, but the thing is, I get what you're saying, because when you're looking at a lot of relationships in comics, like the whole Luke Cage, Jessica Jones deal, like that was accepted because there was a long history behind it. Like when you're talking about the Mary Jane Peter Parker thing, totally invested in that. So I can see exactly where your point is being drawn to where, okay, they did what we just talked about earlier. They did the whole Storm T'Challa thing for the image and how that looked dynamically uh to comic fans, or
Mm-hmm.
better yet, even black comic fans. So now when you're looking at that situation, because damn, you just like you killed that one right there, man. Like the fact that you see, and the thing is, Logan always has like tumultuous relationships, whether it's Itsu, his Japanese wife that he had where he birthed Dakin, or the whole Jean Grey love triangle paradigm that they have there. Nobody talks about that, the Logan Storm dynamic.
Yeah.
Nobody. Yeah, you,
No.
you blew that out the park with that one.
And every time I talk about it, I get people getting upset, especially black people specifically in like
Uh-huh.
blurred groups. I'll be saying, yeah, I'm more of, and it's not to say I'm not a fan of Storm and T'Challa, especially more so what Ta-Nehisi Coates has been doing in his recent run
Yeah,
of like trying to fix when they first got together. He's been working to fix that, but at the
yeah.
same time, I still like Storm and Wolverine more than I like Storm
Mhm.
and T'Challa. And then
Yeah.
also I feel like part of me is also like on the flip side, it seems like after all the work that Ta-Nehisi Coates did with trying to fix Storm and T'Challa's relationship, they're instantly trying to get rid of it. Like if you looked at the recent like House of X or X of Swords run,
Yeah.
the Storm breaking into Wakanda and stealing the sword, and then
Oh yeah.
yeah, so it's like I don't know what it is about Marvel.
Yeah, I think in that
It's
whole
it's
sense, they
it's like at one point they want Storm and T'Challa to be together, but at the same time they don't.
yeah, because in this Jonathan Hickman run, they're fracturing all relationships. Like not only has Professor X had enough, but Cyclops has had enough. Storm, man, fuck all them other people outside of here. It doesn't necessarily carry over to the mission statement in which we've tried to establish ourselves as mutants. So it's almost like that whole it's the segregationist movement that they kind of like put on, to where anybody outside of being a mutant is just excluded, regardless of the history.
Yeah.
So that just plays into a heavy part.
I can't find it.
No worries.
I'm,
Hey, no worries at all, man. But
I'm
yo,
seeing I'm seeing the panels, but I'm not seeing. I'm
oh,
trying to get the exact issue so I can look it up, but it's not the exact panel because it's not the panel that I want.
mm. But anyway, Mike, Michael, I appreciate you doing this. This has been an awesome talk. For real.
I appreciate you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Yo, how can people get in touch with you, regardless of any social media outlets, and definitely your YouTube page?
Uh, just look up Black Gay Comic Geek, all one word, and you should find me. Well, you know, YouTube. That's the name of my YouTube channel. That's the name of my Instagram. Twitter is just B Gay Comic Geek because Black Gay Comic Geek was too long, apparently, for a Twitter handle.
The same
So
thing happened to Frankie. She can't put Fantastic Frankie on there, so she has to be Fanboy Fighter.
yeah, I didn't know the origin of that, but yeah. So, but even either way, I'm pretty sure if you type in Black Gay Comic Geek, you'll find me, or you may find the white guy, Gay Comic Geek. But just put a black in front of that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, for anybody that is out there looking for very diverse views on anything comic related, anything movie related, anything film related, anything TV related, Michael is your guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so
On my channel, I mostly do film and TV because I don't, like I said, I have Marvel Unlimited app. Things aren't coming out. Like, you know, like the comic book specific channels, they're reviewing everything that comes out every week.
uh,
I'm not reading that frequently. So that's
but
why I mostly do like fantasy TV shows and movies and stuff like that because I can keep up with that.
yeah, but for anybody knowing and understanding foreground, you know exactly what the hell you're talking about. Let's just say this.
A little
All
bit,
right.
a little bit.
All right. So Michael, thank you. I appreciate you.
I
And this,
appreciate you.
this has been fun. Facts Project, and we out.